Alrighty, welcome. This is week 6 of the course, Business 130 Principles of Macroeconomics. So we are past the halfway point, or we are at the halfway point. You would have just to have completed the midterm exam, which is a multiple choice exam. And this week we are going to cover two chapters, chapters 8 and 9. And now I think is a good time to start mentioning that the final exam will be a different type of exam, will not be multiple choice, and it will happen on week 10, and we'll start talking about that soon. But this will require you to do some work and an application of the concept that we study in the course. So you make sure you keep up with the work, that you complete, you understand what each week talks about. So let's go and look at the Blackboard course. So as you go here, you will see what the announcements are for the week when you enter the course. And as usual, you want to start a coursework. Coursework, it's what you access all the weekly work. So when you scroll down, this week we're going down to week 6. And week 6, we talk about the labor market and we talk about savings and capital formation. So now we're really going into the core of the macro theory. The first one is you're looking at labor markets. We're talking about how you measure unemployment, but now, and wages and stuff like that. So now we talk about how supply demand in the labor market affects employment and things like that. And then we talked about savings and capital formation. So savings is basically the mechanism by which people that earn money spend some, save some, and the savings gets deposited. People put money in their bank. And we'll see in a couple of chapters how the banks create money by loaning out money. But today we see what the characteristics are of savings, how much people are saving, and depending how much you save, what the plus and minuses are of saving more or saving less over time. And so you will click here, and then as usual, you will have a list, like a summary of what's due this week, chapter 8 and 9. Then you will look at the objectives, so what we talk about this week, the labor market, as we said, and savings, and how psychological factors influence savings, and the different components, and how you go from the individual decision to save to the national aggregate of savings, so how much the country saves as a whole, and what that means in terms of investing and economic growth. And then you have down here is assignment and projects. This will just go in and click on each one as you did before, and you complete all the assignments of the week. And the one we are going to discuss here is look at the chapters for the week, chapter 8, 9. So if you click on each one, you can go directly to the book and read the chapter. And here you have the two PowerPoint presentations for chapters 8 and 9. And again, here there's no video. I'll post when I'm done with this one. I'll post also the video down here for this week. But you also, if you have questions regarding any of the problems you're doing, again, send me an email and I'll make a short video addressing the specific question. Because if you have a question, somebody else might have a question regarding the same topic. Okay, so again, the two chapters 8 and 9, and here are the two PowerPoints. And the PowerPoints are a good summary. After you read the chapter, I think using the PowerPoint as a reference, it's a very good habit, I think. And so if we go here to the first, you can see here, this is the first PowerPoint for chapter 8. I should go from the start. And chapter 8 talks about the labor market, workers, wages, and unemployment, right? And so here's what we'll learn. We'll learn how the trends are, what characterize the labor market over the decades in industrialized countries, and then how you can apply supply-demand model, and then how the changes in supply-demand for labor creates the outcome, which is wages, right? So remember, in the supply-demand model, we had the quantity on the x-axis, the price on the y-axis, and the price of labor is called wage. It's still a price for something, but it's called wage. And then it helps you define the different types of unemployment, and we'll see, and you can read what they are. But in this chapter, that discusses all these areas where it discusses the growth, so it discusses the difference between unemployment and wage growth over time. And so here you can see how the different statistics are how much real wages adjusted for inflation, which, you understand what inflation is, so you need to account for price changes over time to decide if something is a real growth or not. And here it tells that over time how much wages have grown, and you can see that one trend, for example, here is pretty clear. It goes up to 2016, but you can see a decrease in the rate of growth of real wages over time. So you're still growing, still making more money, but at a lower growth rate. And like everything, like all the other chapters, they have here all this data, these problems that you can do, and you can decide how many. It starts from the single individual firm, how firms make decisions on how many people to hire depending on the marginal product of labor, how much extra stuff and the value produced by an extra worker versus the wage of the worker, and what the consequences are of increase in wages or increase in productivity in terms of how many people will be hired. And so you will have a supply for labor, you will have a demand for labor. Remember that the supply of labor is the workers. We workers, we supply our labor, so we give our labor, we sell our labor for money, and the employers, they are the demand. They want labor. So you will have a supply and demand for labor, and you will have like for the supply demand model exactly the same way. And if you put all the demand and supply of labor for specific industries, you get the entire supply and demand labor for the country. And so you will have a model in which here you have demand, downward sloping like everything else we studied in the previous chapter, where the supply demand, the supply of labor is this, and then when there are changes in demand, what happens to wages? So here, for example, it shows that industrialized countries, that they needed more workers because industries needed more worker. Then there was an increase in demand for labor, and that caused a change in wages for labor, for example, right? And so this is one of the possible consequences. But there are all these parts where it discusses what happens to wages and what happens to supply and demand of labor. So you can go through the chapter and look at that. And there's some interesting graphs at the end. So here, for example, they talk about unemployment in Western Europe between 1991 and 2016. And you can see how different countries have different employment rates at different points, and how, for the most part, probably Germany and UK were the difference, but for the most part, they were higher than the US. So here there's no US, but you can see again the trends of the different countries, and during recessions and period of growth, what happens to unemployment rate. And so this is what it is for chapter 8. For chapter 9, instead, it talks about. Sorry, I gotta close this chapter 8. And no, I closed the wrong one. Sorry, my mistake. I gotta open this again for chapter 9. So it opens. All right, chapter 9 here. And nope, maybe. Okay, finally it's coming. Chapter 9. Savings and capital formation. It talks about the tendency of people to save. So here they show a hypothetical balance sheet for a person, and have assets, how much they have, liabilities, what they owe, and you can see what the outcome is for them. And then they have some charts here. Here's one that relates savings and capital gains. So you can see here household savings, for example. You can see how the saving rates decreased over the early 2000s, and then it started to increase again. What happens to the savings, and then what happens to stock prices, for example, and what happens to home prices. And so you can see here, it depends with savings, and there's some correlations that you can check and what they mean. But an important aspect of the chapter, let me find it, is that it does this differential between two hypothetical families. One family is called the thrift, one is called the spends. You know what they mean, right? The spends, they save only 5% of their income, and they start from the same income. In 1985, it's assumed constant income, real adjusted for inflation, assumes a constant interest rate, and assumes a same time period, 85 to 2020, one saving 5% and spending obviously 95%, the other one, the thrift, spending 80% and saving 20%. And so what happens with this interest rate at the savings and at the spending? And so if you add up all the spendings per year and the difference would be 15% every year of the 40,000, right? So it would be about 6,000 per year. The difference for the number of years here, that is whatever that is, right? From what is 35 years. And so the numbers will be this in the end. You will see what the results is here in consumption, for example, of the two, the thrift, which is based also on the savings, right? And so at first, the thrift will spend less because they're saving more, and the consumption path for in the long term for the spends, it's more constant, because at first you spend 95% and your 5% per year savings tends to accumulate and grow at 8% per year, right? So you have this extra money that comes from extra savings, but it's not that much as the spend. So at first, the thrifts at first are spending less per year, but once they start savings and they keep savings, now they can draw more from their savings, and so they end up spending more later in their lives because they have this accumulated savings. Okay, and let's assume a certain amount of spending from your savings. So you save, you put the money in an account, the account grows, and every year you take out something, you draw something out of it. Okay, so this is an important concept to understand how interest rates and compounding interest in the end ends up with having this differential, right, between the two. And so the spends will end up consuming a little bit more, not too much more over the course of 35 years. But in the end, the retirement savings will be much higher for the thrift, and so you'll have a better lifestyle later in life, right? It makes intuitive sense, but when you see with numbers, it's also very interesting. And then it goes into the national accounting. So now we really go into the core of what is a macroeconomic study. So you can see here, you will see when you do the gross domestic product, which is equal to consumption plus investments plus government spending plus the difference between imports and exports. And we're looking now at the investments. The investments are relating with the savings, because savings, as we said, go into the bank loans out to companies that want to start a business, and so you have these investments that are derived from savings. And so here is, for example, is a graph of the US saving rates between different periods, right? And so you can see it's volatile. It goes between close to 20%, and it had up and down, lower at 10%, and it is different. And so this is basically what this is about. It's about how savings are derived. What are savings? The chapter goes into the psychological aspect of savings, why some people save more, some less in different times. And then you can see here that the savings of businesses, which is more constant than households and governments, and now that varies. But there's all these interesting aspects. And as you read the chapter, think about your habits. Are you saving? If you're young, you may want to think starting a retirement account, like an IRA now, and save more money, put something away, because usually it turns out to be a better idea for the future. Okay, so this is a chapter. Again, if you have any questions, let me know, and we'll address them. But complete your work, and hopefully you're enjoying the course. I think the material is very important, and there's a lot that applies to our everyday lives. Okay, for this week is everything, and thank you very much. Now I'm going to pause, and we'll see you next week.